Alright, so this is a re-record because my usual microphones that I was using were just not really working. They kept having this weird popping sound, and I've dropped them a few times recently, so I'm guessing that might have something to do with it. So I'm sorry if my voice sounds different. I hope it comes through better on this recording. I just couldn't use the old one because the popping noises were so common that it was just really distracting. But with that aside, this is how I got diagnosed with autism. And hello, my name's Monoex, and welcome to my second Speedpaint Storytime. Hopefully this one's a little better quality-wise than my first video. I was pretty nervous, but I think I'm getting into it. Hopefully the audio doesn't start as quietly this time. I kind of struggle with volume control, and I think my nervousness was just kind of like making me lower my voice without noticing. But anyway, before I get into things, this speed paint was inspired by the Fleetway Sonic comics, more specifically Fleetway Supersonic. I think the idea of a superform being crazy and evil from the Chaos Emeralds being corrupted is kind of intriguing, so I drew Super Shadow in a Fleetway-inspired style. I actually posted this on a couple of platforms, and someone told me some really cool, lore behind Fleetway, because I didn't know much about Fleetway until recently. And they were talking about how interesting it would be because of Shadow being built to handle chaos energy. You know, how would that go with corrupted Chaos Emeralds? But anyway, if you watched my last video, and feel free to check it out if you like this one, you'll know I was recently tested for autism and ADHD, and I was waiting on my results at the time of recording. So, I have some news. As you can likely tell from the title, I was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. I was also diagnosed with ADHD and mood disorder, although I'm admittedly not very educated on mood disorder yet, and don't exactly understand what that means for my case or how it impacts my life. I do plan to do more research after this video. I've just had a lot going on these past few days, mentally. But getting diagnosed was incredibly relieving and validating, but also kind of upsetting, and I'll get into that. Growing up, I had many moments where I felt I was like an alien, barely fitting in with humanity. I couldn't make friends or keep them unless they were autistic too, and even then I'd often have misunderstandings and falling outs. I felt angry at the world because I felt constantly misunderstood, and oftentimes I was mistreated for things about myself I can't control. I'll admit, I still have some negative feelings towards the world and society. I don't think those will go away anytime soon. Just because life doesn't really get easier, and wow, I'm realizing there could be deeper reasons for why I relate to Shadow the Hedgehog. As weird as that sounds. But first, I'd like to go over the testing process itself and my thoughts on it. So for context, I've had a lot of problems with doctors in the past. I used to live in the southern part of the US in an area where mental health care just wasn't very good or ethical, in my opinion. I could rant on and on about some of the worst I faced, including being given medicines that weren't appropriate for my age that messed my brain up even more. And breaches of confidentiality, but that would take forever with how common it was. I also had a lot of issues with doctors only caring about my parents' thoughts about me and not my mental state as the patient. While including parents in a minor's treatment can be a good thing, and usually it is, it's fine, it also can be disadvantageous if said parents are abusive or known for lying. But anyway, upon moving west at 18, I began seeking help while representing myself. And to put it simply, I got sent straight to a psych and out for ADHD/ASD testing right away. I guess it was kind of obvious. Again, I'd wondered if I had these conditions for a long time, but getting tested was a ridiculous struggle in my home state that I had given up on before this. Honestly, I'm suspicious that it had something to do with the gender bias in my high grades in school. Not to mention, the aforementioned lying from parents. But don't quote me on that. This is all just a hunch I can't prove. I don't know what these people were thinking, and I don't want to, project my thoughts as, what they were. I'm not them. I can't know. But the testing took place about a month after it was scheduled. I'm thankful it didn't take longer, as I've heard it could take months on end to get done, and the wait for results can be even longer. The testing process itself wasn't bad at all, although I did end up with a pretty big headache. It was worth it though. I had to fill out some questionnaires online during my appointment, mostly just asking how I experienced things in my daily life, what difficulties I had, and stuff like that. I had to fill out an anxiety, and depression screener as well, which I'm happy to report I scored for 0 depression on. This result meant a lot to me because it was tangible proof I beat depression and my past of unaliving ideation and attempts. Unfortunately, up until now, I was still being haunted by misdiagnosed major depressive disorder, aka MDD. But anyway, my memory is a tad cloudy, but for testing, they mostly just had me move blocks, poke a pen through some holes, repeat words and numbers after the lady I was working with, name animals I could think of, and general stuff that probably wouldn't make any sense outside of testing, honestly. They did explain what those tests were to me over the phone and how they were relevant, because, they do sound really weird, but I kind of forgot. Just know that all of those tests did have a valid purpose. So once the 2.5 hours or so were up, I went home and waited for a phone call to schedule my results call. Yeah, it was results call, results appointment, whatever. I did have some difficulty getting a hold of them because initially they had someone call me at 9 a.m. And if you know me, I'm not exactly awake at 9 a.m. a lot of the time. She left a voicemail at least, and I worked up the nerve to call back, only to go unanswered multiple times over multiple days, even when I sent a voicemail. I guess these things just can't ever go on without something going wrong. So after a week of her not answering, I called the doctor's office. They pick up on the second ring, and instantly schedule me for a phone call later that day. Don't get me wrong, I'm really glad I got my results fast, but come on. Why have someone reach out to me who isn't gonna pick up the phone? And mind you, I made sure to call back during business hours. Ugh. If it was that easy, why did I have to deal with that? But I'm still happy I got my results in a bit over a week, because that's much better than waiting months upon months. So the call happens, and that's when I learned my 3 diagnoses I mentioned. I was sent resource links, but here's where I ran into another problem. Out of the 7 resource links I was sent, about 4 of them straight up didn't exist. Yeah, you heard me right. I went to the links and they just say stuff like, domain for sale, when a website used to be there but it's not there anymore. 2 more of the resources only really had services for children, or only did ABA, which is a highly controversial therapy that can border on abusing autistic people. This left 1 resource, which I haven't reached out to yet, that had social groups. The one thing I could maybe see myself benefiting from, but I have no idea if they support people my age. But when it came to actual support groups or therapy that isn't known for abusing patients or primarily being used for children, nope, that didn't exist. While my testing process was great and the people were nice to me, it's hard to feel cared about at all when the list of resources you're sent is outdated and useless, or meant for people much younger than you. And it really boggles my mind, because autistic children grow up to be autistic adults. We don't just go away. It's sad that resources are so limited, especially when you're someone like me who was diagnosed late. My autism wasn't caught for so long that I'm really not sure what to do about it now. Any help I could have gotten outside of the people I love isn't being offered anymore, all because I hit the magical number of age 18. Our society consistently fails autistic people, especially older autistic people, and those who are assigned female at birth. And to be fair, I mean, our society fails all autistic people, but in recent times, we're learning that it's underdiagnosed in women, and, a lot of these things, it sucks. It shouldn't have to be like that. And I'm somewhat lucky. Mine was still caught before my 20s. I've heard stories of people in their 40s and 50s being diagnosed and feeling like they wasted their life, or that they missed out on something really big, and I thankfully have what I hope to be a long future ahead of me. Honestly, I still need to process my diagnoses. That's why this video isn't going to be longer. I think all I can really do now is learn how to cope with my existence and cope with my sensory issues. While I'm happy to know why I'm like this, I also feel a bit discouraged. Obviously, blaming myself for everything in the past wasn't a good coping mechanism, but I did have some hope that I could make my mental health better enough with lots of work so that I could eventually be a normal person. I now realize that I'm not normal on a fundamental level. While that's perfectly okay and valid, that doesn't erase the pain I feel and knowing that I have no control over this. My whole life so far, I've had a lot of situations where I didn't have control, and those situations affected me really badly. So to learn that I fundamentally can't control this, that's a really hard thing to stomach, But for the final section here, in hopes of ending on a positive note, I would like to share my thoughts on getting diagnosed and whether I recommend other people do it. So, I used to not understand why people didn't want to get diagnosed with mental disorders and disabilities in general if they had the chance and means to. There's a lot of people who would kill to have that. And while yes, some people don't want to get diagnosed for scummy reasons, in that case, I'm mainly talking about toxic people online who glamorize mental health conditions and make them out to be cutesy or glamorous even though they turn around and spew violent hatred towards mentally ill people who disagree with them or show symptoms that aren't cute, therefore proving they're a hypocrite. I now understand there's a certain level of strength it takes to hear the confirmation of a diagnosis. It can be freeing, but also damning. But if I really had to recommend whether or not you should get diagnosed and seek help, even with all of the issues surrounding healthcare and society, I will always say yes. If you suspect you have an issue, please see a licensed professional. If you don't have the financial means or transportation, or you have other hurdles like that, please be aware that you can still get diagnosed. If you're in the States, you can always apply for government benefits to see if you qualify for financial help. And even if you can't get help through the government, there are other resources out there that aren't the government that can help provide funding. Some states will even help you financially with getting rides to and from places you need to go for help. You never know how much help you can get until you look for it. Heck, my testing was covered by the government. And I live in the US. And, I don't feel shame in admitting that because of the situation I came out of, to move here west. I was broke when I got here. But thankfully, I didn't have to pay a dime out of pocket. And I am so, so thankful. I know I have my gripes about the government, but I am insanely grateful for programs and services like this because they really can help people who are in bad situations. And I know there's a lot of people out there who can't afford healthcare, especially with how bad inflation is currently. And the thing is, there's a chance you can. I'm not going to pretend like this will help every situation. I was incredibly fortunate, as we're all in different financial states with different support systems, but I want to spread this information in hopes that at least one person out there will possibly benefit from it. And normally, like, I would provide resources here, but because this is something that can be so, like, state-specific, country-specific, I highly recommend that if anything I've said here, like, prompts you to go look for help in getting diagnosed, just research, like, what's available in your state and your country, because if I say something, there's a chance, that's not available there, or even, you might even have better resources available to you. But anyway, I do understand where people come from when they do things like self-diagnosing, but there's just no way to know for sure if you have a condition without going to the right place and talking to the right people. While Google offers lots of information on various mental health concerns, unfortunately, Google isn't a doctor. You also can't access medicines, therapies, and other resources out of the few things that do exist without being diagnosed. If you want to improve your health, knowing your exact issues is key. And even if you don't have autism, but maybe you have anxiety or depression or any other disorder, or maybe you don't have any issues, like, that's okay too. You are valid and you are not alone. But with all of that said, I think I'm gonna wrap things up here. I hope you all have a wonderful day or night. I know I'll be having one, although I gotta go file taxes for the first time today, which is pretty weird. I'm not used to that. Hopefully it goes okay. But thanks so much for watching, and feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. You can also share your own stories and thoughts in the comments if you'd like. If you want to see more of my art, feel free to check me out on my Tumblr, my Instagram. What platforms do I have again? Oh, I also have Twitter. You can check me out either at Monoex or Monoex Art. It really just depends on the platform. I'll put them below. And goodbye, friends. Have a great one.